This is me, and this has been me for the past 3 weeks. So, I've been busy. And while I'd love to be building something absolutely groundbreaking and expanding my skills and knowledge, I'm currently stuck doing schoolwork. So, I thought I'd show you guys a bit of what I've been working on recently for my computer graphics course at UWI. And this is essentially what the assignment was. So we had to use our imagination, which is always fun, and the PNGWriter class, which was provided for us to write a C++ program, which creates an image that uses at least 35 of the PNGWriter class functions. So pretty cool. Now, if you know me, you know I never get started without a plan. So the first thing we're going to do is open Procreate and create a reference image. So I started by making a very rough outline, which I then refined and made it a little bit more, clean. And throughout this entire process, I was thinking of which functions I was going to use, how I was going to use at least 35 functions, and where things were going to be placed. So I just played around with the colors, played around with the structure, stuff like that, and then I had my final reference image. So like any good developer, my next step was to look at documentation, and the documentation was pretty comprehensive for what it was. So I felt pretty confident about the project and decided let's just get set up. So I went to the setup document and followed all of these steps, which I won't bore you with, and I was finally able to compile my PNG code. Jumping right in, we'll get started by drawing something pretty simple, which is the pink sky in the background of the window. And doing this is pretty easy with the filled square function, which takes in an X and Y starting point and an X and Y finish point, as well as a RGB value or 3 RGB values, which can be doubles between 0 and 1 or integers between 1 and 65,535. But for most of the project, I just stick to using doubles. So once I have my filled square call complete, I try running, and unfortunately, nothing shows up. Not good. So I tried playing around with the coordinates a bit more since I figured it wasn't necessarily my RGB values, and making a square in the bottom left corner that was 50 pixels wide and tall. And this one actually showed up, so we're off to a decent start. Next, we can try to make this square a bit bigger by setting the x2 to the middle of the page. So we do the width divided by 2, height divided by 2, and we'll try running it to see what happens. And we get a larger square. Cool. At this point, feeling pretty good, so now we're just going to try to move the square to match the reference image. So putting it closer to the middle, but now it's just a line. And then we adjust a bit more so that we can get an actual square in the middle of the page. So now I have these XY coordinates figured out, and that's all cool and fine and dandy, and I'm thinking this project's gonna be fine, a little bit tedious, but it's gonna be fine. Just add in XY coordinates and the colors. But up to this point, I haven't added in any colors, so how am I gonna add in colors? I have the hex values from the Procreate file, I have HSV, but we need RGB. So am I gonna manually calculate them, or? And now we have RGB values. So essentially all I did was ask chat to convert all of the hex values that I was giving it into RGB values between 0 and 1 in the double format so that we fall in line with the parameters of the functions of the PNGWriter class. This means that I now know how to manipulate the XY coordinates as well as add in the colors that I have in my reference image. So from here on out, it's a pretty straightforward process, just rinse and repeat, putting down things, changing their positions, well, I didn't really change the colors, but changing the positions to make sure everything was lining up with the reference image and that the final product would turn out to be something that I was happy with. One thing I needed to keep in mind while working on this project is that everything was a layer, even if there were no layers. Yes, I was drawing pixel by pixel, but the way that you stack these different shapes on top of one another will affect the way that the final image looks. So I had to be very considerate in terms of the order that I was making these images appear, and well, these shapes appear, and essentially start with the furthest thing away, which would be the window, the wall, the stars outside the window, stuff like that, and then kind of work my way forward to the main element or the foreground, which would be the cat. And now many RGBs, many squares, and many lines of code later, we have finally finished the code for our background and the top shelf of our bookshelf. Next, we add our bottom bookshelf, some plants, a scary cat face, a less scary cat face, some cute ears, and last but not least, the body. And yes, the cat is now sitting down, and the cat will stay sitting down because I'm not drawing all of those Beziers. So, finishing touches? Finishing touches. And I took so long to edit this video that I have a final grade, so let's see what that's about. The grade was split into two components, the first one being the number of functions used, all 35 functions, and the complexity or creativity of the image, for a total of 70 points. For the functions, I got 35 out of 35. I also got the same 35 for complexity, meaning that we have a total of 70 points for full marks. And that is essentially the full process of using the PNGWriter C++ class to make this image. I thoroughly enjoyed the process, as tedious as it was, and as somebody who frequently uses and works with PNGs, it was quite interesting to actually make one myself. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, this has been Technical ET.